First up, reports of clashes that occurred between the Indian and Chinese soldiers on the LAC in the Tawang sector of Arunachal Pradesh on Friday are coming in now. Government sources say on the 9th of December, PLA troops contacted the LAC in Tawang, which was contested by Indian troops in a firm and resolute manner. This face-off led to minor injuries to a few personnel from both sides. Both sides immediately disengaged from the area as per government sources. As a follow-up of the incident, India's commander in the area held a flag meeting with his counterpart to discuss the issue in accordance with structured mechanisms to restore peace and tranquility. Vishnu Shom is now joining us with more details. Vishnu, even though disengagement took place immediately, but several soldiers have sustained injuries. Do we know how many soldiers were injured and how many were involved in the clashes from the other side? Any further details that your sources are willing to share at this stage?
No, Maha, we don't have any further detail beyond what actually is that these clashes took place. We do not know how many soldiers on either side. We do not know the severity of the injuries. But as you mentioned, what has been done as a result of this incident is that there was an effort by local commanders to sort out the issue. These, as I understand it, are probably the first physical clashes between Indian and Chinese soldiers since August 2020, at least the first that have been reported. The previous clashes in August 2020 took place on the south bank of the Pangong Lake after the Galwan incident, where, of course, we'd lost soldiers. They were killed in action, as were Chinese soldiers, who we believe also perished, and indeed they did. But this is just yet another example of how the line of control between India and China remains deeply contested. This took place in an area just north of Tawang, where the Chinese believe that the line of control is separate, different from where we believe it exists. It is known, of course, as the McMahon line in Arunachal Pradesh. And so when Chinese soldiers actually breached the LAC, per our perception, our soldiers responded, and that's their prerogative. But fortunately, it's not resulted in something more substantive, nothing worse than this. But obviously, there is that tension which continues.
Vishnu, since you mentioned what we've seen in Galwan in 2020, how seriously any such incident which leads to a clash between soldiers of the two neighboring countries is taken? And is it natural now that this issue will also be taken up diplomatically?
Well, I think what is curious in this particular incident is that it took place on the 9th, but it's the 12th now, and we're getting word of this 3 days later. So that's interesting that there would be a delay before an actual announcement of this. So obviously it's gone through some sort of decision-making process, and it has now been announced. These are always taken up, but the fact that there have been local commanders who met seems to indicate that this is being resolved. This is not a very large incident. It's not another Galwan. It's not something which has gotten out of hand. There are no fatalities. So we need to look at it like that. When you have soldiers of both sides, some things like this have happened dozens and dozens of times over the last several years. So it's one more incident like that. There have been injuries, and it is significant to report that. But beyond that, nothing else.
Vishnu Shom, thanks for joining us with all those details.